That was The Future from ELENI Mandell from her brand new record, I Can See the Future, which we've been playing quite a bit of here. We started off that set as always with The Prisoner, but we followed it up with ELENI Mandell and Benji Hughes doing Never Have to Fall in Love Again. After that, from the album Snakebite, the title track, Snakebite, and since we were on the snake mode, we played Snake Song from Wishbone, all by ELENI Mandell. And we are lucky enough to have a YepRoc recording artist and one of my favorites, ELENI Mandell, on the air with us right now. ELENI, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. It's great to have you on the air. Before we talk about the new record, you have a great little story on a very short snippet of a story on your website about meeting your now label mate, John Doe, for the first time. Can you possibly relay that for us?
Well, of course, I haven't read what's on my website in years, but it's probably the same story that's in my head, I hope. But I think I was 13 or 14 years old and had taken the bus from the Valley in Los Angeles over the hill to Melrose, which was considered, the best, coolest part of town at the time. And there was a record store called Aaron's Records, and I went in there to go shopping and saw him. I was already a fan of X, but I didn't own any of their records. So I quickly bought Under the Big Black Sun and then went up to him and asked him for his autograph, and he signed it. Yours was a big X.
And that's a great story. And now you guys are label mates.
Yeah, and I feel like we're friends. We've met many times over the years and more often recently. And he's just a sweetheart, and I feel so lucky to have been so influenced by such a nice person.
Yeah, he's been on the show before. Do you still have that kind of childlike thing when you are in his presence? Because he's like one of those guys that when you're a fan of him when you're a kid, you just...
Yeah, I mean, you know what? DJ Bonebreak, their ex-drummer, is a fan of mine and toured with me for my last release, Artificial Fire. He did the U.S. tour with me. Mm-hmm. And I do have moments of thinking like, wow, this is so weird. But then I also have moments thinking, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen when I was a teenager.
That's funny. That's a great story. So now you're on YepRoc, and it seemed like it was like almost like a clean slate start for you for this record, and you just crafted it beautifully. Joe Ciccarelli, producer of the Shins, Strokes, White Stripes, is involved with it. And could you tell us how that, how the band, how the players kind of all came about to make I Can See the Future?
Well, I didn't know anything about Joe when a friend of mine who had worked with him, got a great artist named Daniel Martin Moore. He heard the title track, I Can See the Future, at a live show and said, I've been thinking about that song. I think you should work with Joe Ciccarelli, who produced my record. And I had no ideas at that point about what I wanted to do, so I was like, okay, I'll contact this guy. And it wasn't until Joe and I were kind of already in conversation that I Googled him and found out what an amazing history he has and his credentials. But he's a very nice person, very down to earth, and we sort of immediately just started talking about the songs. And it took a long time because Joe is probably the hardest working man in the music business that I personally know, and took a long time to schedule us to be together. And then he wanted to use players that he was familiar with, and I wanted to use the guys that I've worked with for years and that I love. So we sort of combined those two things, and Brian Phoebus and Jeremy Drake have played with me for a really long time, and then Joe wanted to use Joey Warnker on drums, and I knew Joey. I'm a huge fan of his drumming, so that was great. And then Zach Gray, who played keyboards. These were sort of the core four guys, and it was just great. I just loved working with them, and I love them all as people, and I'm a fan of their skills.
So were the songs like completely written before you went in, or did you write as you go, or was it a half and half kind of a deal, or what?
the songs are always completely written as far as I'm concerned. There were a couple songs where Joe said, I think maybe you should write another bridge, or this could use a different lyric here. And, of course, at the time, I was just like, how dare you? I very quietly thought that. I just sort of bristled. But I also trusted Joe, and I felt, this is a challenge to kind of get pushed a little bit in a direction maybe I wouldn't go in normally, and so I followed his advice on those occasions, and I'm totally glad that I did.
Yeah, it's a beautiful record, and you also got to work with Becky Stark from Lavender Diamond and Inara George, of course, who were part of the Living Sisters project with you, another favorite here, and just a beautiful record. And I have to tell you, when you are singing with them, it sounds like you guys have been singing for like 20 years together. It's just amazingly comfortable sounding. Is it work to sing with Becky and Inara, or is it comfortable, or how is it?
When I love singing harmony so much, for me it's almost like a religious experience. There's something really physical that happens when your voices combine in harmony, and it's hard to describe, but I guess that's why people love to be in choirs, and it's just such a great feeling. And I love them as people. We do sort of have a sibling relationship. I'd say Becky and I, especially, when we started the band together, and we can totally knock heads, but but we've been doing, we stay together. It's kind of cool. But it is a lot of work to learn the harmonies. I think I'm the worst. I would say that Inara is the best. Alex Lilly, who's our fourth member now, she replaced Inara when Inara was on pregnancy leave, and we liked her so much, we decided to keep her, so now there's four of us. And Alex and Inara, I think, are close to being perfect singers and are really good with harmony. And then I'd say Becky, has great ideas about harmony, and then I just come chugging along behind. It's not easy for me to find my parts or to remember them, and every time we start singing, I think, oh my God, I'm going to get kicked out of this band. And remarkably, everything comes together, and it works.
Yeah. Is this going to be an ongoing project, I hope?
Yeah, we just finished an EP, and we're all, involved in other projects, obviously. Mm-hmm. So we're really, really slow. But we finished this EP, and we have a show in January opening for Steve Earle at UCLA.
Oh, very nice.
Which is a huge deal for me. And, when you live here, playing at UCLA is a pretty big deal. So that's pretty exciting.
Very cool. Let's go back to, if you don't mind, we'll go back to the beginning just a little bit. Your first record, Wishbone, of course, was on Mr. Charles Records, which, of course, is Chucky Weiss's label back then. And tell us how you hooked up with Chucky Weiss. And for those of you out there who don't know, obviously a longtime Tom Waits confidant, stalwart, what have you, and made some great records on his own, as well as he's a great drummer. How did you hook up with Chucky Weiss?
Okay, before I tell you how I met him, I just want to say that Mr. Charles Records was my invention. It's my own quote-unquote label, and I named it for him because he was my mentor, and I don't know, I felt very nostalgic about that, so that's what I named it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, good.
Chuck and I had seen Chuck play, I guess it was 1990, at a place called The Central, which later became the Viper Room. And he used to play there every Monday, and a friend of mine said she could get us in even though we weren't 21 yet. And we went there, and I know this sounds impossible and ridiculous, but at the end of each show, Chuck would walk through the audience as the show was ending, and with his saxophone player following behind him. And he walked right up to me, and he gave me this huge smile, and then he walked away. And about a month later, I went to a restaurant with a friend. It's a place called Moonstone Frank's, which is famous. It's one of the oldest restaurants in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Red vinyl booths. I think it's probably in a Tom Waits song. I could be wrong, but and I walked in there and I saw Chuck, and I sort of walked by his table and he looked at me and he said hi, and then I, so goofy. I was like, I loved your show. Really stupid. We ended up talking, and he said, come meet me. I'm going to meet a friend at Canner's Deli, which is another famous place in Los Angeles. And I was like, no way. And then something in me sort of clicked, and I said, okay, I'll meet you there. And I just thought this was some weird, eccentric old musician, and he wasn't even that old at the time. And so we got to Canner's and sat down, and then Tom Waits came and sat down next to me, and that was the friend he was meeting. Pretty incredible night.
Great story.
Ever since, remarkably, we're still friends.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Yeah, it's and of course, a lot of your early stuff compared a lot to Waits, and in terms of arranging and things like that, I guess most. But your sound on those first couple of records is just so unique. I remember hearing Wishbone for the first time and just saying, this is like amazing. And it just like stood out from everything else. And one great thing about your career has been that you can write songs, you do different things, but the arrangements of the songs very often, it's not necessarily album to album, sometimes within albums, changes a lot. It's like stylistic changes. So there can be a country sounding song on a record in addition to a rock song and something a little more cabaret maybe. Do the arrangements like come to you while you're writing the song, or does sometimes that come later?
I think the arrangements really come when I start playing with other people, with other musicians. And then I sort of start getting ideas. In the beginning, the arrangements really just happened in the studio. And later, I had this core, group of guys, and they were my band. And we would play a lot of the songs live and sort of arrange them on tour, especially with Artificial Fire, my last record. So, everything just sort of evolved and continues to evolve.
It all sounds very comfortable in terms of the arranging, like all the musicians have been working, kind of together. So, nothing sounds forced on your records, which is like an amazing thing to have happen, I think.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's and so now you've been out on the road supporting I Can See the Future right now. And how's the audience response been to I Can See the Future?
The audience response has been really great. I've been doing this tour solo because I've got these two kids now. They're almost 2 years old. They're twins. And I bring them on the tour instead of other musicians. So I'm playing the shows by myself, which I've actually really, really been enjoying because it's a way to sort of communicate with the audience more intimately and really talk about the songs and tell stories about the people in the songs. And then what's been really fun on the tour is asking the audience towards the end of each show, what they want to hear. And it really is so heartwarming to me that people know my music because I feel like, I'm sort of the flea on the underdog and help to roll into some town where I've never been and have people call out requests. Really, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great. Your catalog has just built up, and you've just released all this stuff. So, how's your relationship with? Obviously, it's a good relationship, but in terms of, is there a long record deal with YepRoc currently? Is it a single deal? Is it a bunch of records? What's the story?
The deal is for 2 records, and of course, I think they are allowed to get out of it at any time. Hopefully, they won't. I really like them as people, and I think they do great work and understand the business and artists and artistry. So I'm hoping that we can work together for a long time.
Yeah. So you're home for a little bit now, and then where's the next stop on the road?
Next show is in Seattle, and then I head down the West Coast. And then I'm really excited that I've been asked to open about 2 weeks of shows with Nick Lowe in the fall.
That's great. And you're going to be coming to the East Coast with that?
I am. It starts in Albany, and the only New York shows are Albany and Buffalo.
Oh, okay. So no New York City shows at this point.
I know, not right now, but I'm sure I'll be back soon enough.
Well, that'll be wonderful. ELENI Mandell, I know you have your hands full right there with a couple of youngins, and I'd like to thank you so much for spending some time with us here on WUSB Stony Brook, and it's just been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening and supporting my music. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think this show is actually may turn into a 2-hour ELENI Mandell special. We'll have to see how it rolls.
Wow.
So there's a lot of music to cover, and I can't cover it all, so I have to squeeze it all in 2 hours. ELENI, thanks so much for joining us, and just stay on the line 1 second if you would.